Welcome to the Workplace Ninja Summit 2022 podcast, a live recording directly from Lucerne with interesting topics.
So there are we again for the next recording on Workplace Ninja Summit 2022. And now on the table I have Kenneth and John.
You forgot me. John.
Yes. I forgot you almost, but how could it be so well known in the community? My name is Frans Oudendorp, and John, maybe first you can introduce you a little bit.
Yeah, so I am John, I think, yes, as I remember. I've been working actually I was just talking to someone a few minutes ago. I originally got involved with Microsoft back in the days of NT, when we were looking at using NT as real-time controller management front end. So we had these RISC-based machines that were running away at 10,000 millimeters per second. And so NT became the potential front end for this. And I got working with the product group. I got handed a sort of really quite large stack of floppies one day, and someone said, have a look at this. And this was a very early precursor for what was to become on-premise Active Directory. And then I fed back to the product group my experience with it, some ideas and things. And then I got a call from Microsoft UK one day, and they said, we hear you know something about Active Directory. And it was like, yes, but they said, can you come and tell us about it? So I actually remember driving out to Thames Valley Park to Microsoft HQ in the UK, thinking, well, I won't tell you what I think it, but it was a swear word involved. What the, as I was driving, thinking, why on earth is Microsoft asking me to talk to them about their product? But as I say, I had worked quite closely with some guys in the product group. And that formed a beautiful relationship with Microsoft. I've consulted around the world for them. I've been working in the identity space, really with Federation since, I guess, 2002, so 20 years of Federation. I'm very heavily involved in Azure AD and all the leading edge stuff, such as verified IDs and things. So yeah, I think that sums me up.
Let's talk about it in a few minutes. And
okay.
Great to have you here, John. Kenneth?
Yeah, well, Kenneth van Surksum started in IT around 1988. Actually came from the broadcast industry at that time. And in 1998 it was actually companies were lurking new employees with certifications and doing stuff like that. Started out within a large bank within the Netherlands. I worked there for, I think, almost 14 years. And then actually went into consulting business. Within the bank, I actually started with a product which at that time was called SMS. And that was even earlier than the SMS that we have on our phone, which we know. And I actually started using that product up until today. But today my work evolved into becoming what I call now a modern workplace consultant. Actually consulting customers on implementing Microsoft 365 solutions through the whole stack.
Yeah, great. And yesterday I talked with Stephen and Ramya about Endpoint Manager and the keynote that they did. And also that the term SMS was coming through, because if you see the movement from managing endpoints, SMS was the key thing years ago.
Yeah.
But today we will talk about Azure AD. I think for you both, a key application, key feature that is used. But yeah, let's have a look. Conditional access. You both talked about it many times. Azure AD. What is it, John?
What is Azure AD? Well, actually, the way I explain it is, if you think what we need to do is we're authenticating users, but the big question is for what? All right, and we're authenticating users for access to applications, and what we want to do is make sure that access is secure as possible. So we need a policy engine. So when we're going to issue a token that proves our authentication, to an application, we can thoroughly evaluate a whole bunch of factors, and those factors, through conditional access, it could be just the username.
Yep.
Are we happy to let this user, John, access this app? Yeah, it could be. But we can bring in so many different signals and evaluate John's access. And conditional access is moving on quite a lot. It's now not just resources in terms of applications, it's workloads. So when someone is about to register their security credentials, we can apply a conditional access policy. It's got authentication contexts in it now, so that when an application can trigger an authentication context, which in turn will trigger a conditional access policy. So, it is the key to zero trust, and that's why Microsoft are working so hard on it at the moment to add all these lovely features.
Yeah, it's what makes the products quite interesting. It continuously evolves, it's up to date, and actually it's not a one-off assignment with customers helping them once, but you actually continue to be involved helping customers throughout their journey, implementing what John calls the zero trust principles.
Yeah, and you did a lot of sessions in depth conditional access.
Yeah.
What is that all about? Is that configuring, but everything under the hood? What is happening there?
Well, what we see with conditional access implementations, that it actually touches a lot of the other products. For example, you could leverage the compliance state of a device in your conditional access policies. But if you haven't thought about how can I make my devices compliant, or what compliance is, then you have no ground rules in order to be able to access or to turn on conditional access as well. So it involves a lot of other products, going from sensitivity labels, for example, using maybe trusted IP addresses, etc. So there are so many things that you need to configure in order to make the full framework work for a company.
Yeah, conditional access is not only Azure AD, it interacts, what you say, with Endpoint Manager, with information protection, with all other stuff that is within all other products. Azure AD recently joined the Entra new product name. What is it, John?
Well, yes, okay. That's an interesting one. The Entra at the moment is, so Cloud Knox permission management was purchased by Microsoft some time back. And what they've done at the moment is they've bundled the sort of Cloud Knox permission management, Azure AD and Verifiable ID as Entra. All right, and there's a new Entra portal for managing. I think it's, dare I said, somebody needed to find a way of repackaging things, and they did it with Entra.
Yeah, and Azure AD is part of Entra. Also, the Cloud Knox security features that they have acquired, but also Verifiable ID. Maybe it's good to talk a little bit about that. Verifiable ID, what is that and how can we use that?
Okay, so I've actually, interestingly enough, the first time I spoke about decentralized identity was back in 2018. So, this is, and that wasn't really, it was generic. It wasn't really to do with Microsoft. Although Microsoft, it was, then as the Microsoft work emerged and it was working on, it was called Verifiable Credentials then. If you think about, and probably the easiest way is to take about a driving license, right? It's your driving license, you pass your driving test, and you give them your photo and everything else, and they give you a driving license, right? And then you get stopped by a police officer, right? And they ask you for your driving license, and you hand your driving license over, and what it's got on there is you're identified by your photo. Right, so that's your identity, and then there are claims about you. So your address, all right, your age, what you're allowed to drive, right? And so what we've got is bound on this card is your identity, claims about you, and then the card is in a wrapper, so in a plastic envelope with a foil and a hologram and all the rest of it, which proves it was issued by the driving license authority.
Yeah.
right? So that is, and we've had these for years, right? But then we got obsessed with with IT systems, and the first thing we want to know is what your name is. And actually, do we care what your name is? We care that you're a driver. We care that you're a doctor. We care that you're a student maybe, or a vaccinated person, right? So verifiable. I think in the simplest way, a verifiable credential or a verified ID is really an electronic version of a driving license.
Of
right?
the piece of paper.
So
that
it's a piece of paper. And what you need to be careful here, because there is a standard that has been proposed for electronic driving licenses, which will go on a mobile phone.
Yeah.
Right? This is nothing, I'm not talking about that at all. I'm talking about the concept of basically having a subject identifier, having claims about the subject, having an organization that has verified those claims belong to the subject, and then the organization sealing that in an envelope which is verifiable to the org. And all of that is done digitally. The other thing is with the whole concept behind verifiable credentials is the user's identity is not generated by an organization, it's a decentralized identity. So the user generates it themselves through some clever crypto maths.
yeah.
So yeah,
Interesting stuff.
I'm doing a whole hour on it this afternoon, so that was the hour covered in 2 minutes.
Yeah, so if you want to know more, visit John's session this afternoon. Eh?
Yeah, if you be here, you have definitely joined that
you
session.
Come down.
Yeah, but are there already any use cases for verifiable ID that customers have, or probably?
It's very much a work in progress, right? So if you think about it, and some of the sort of concepts are being tried is, you need to do a password reset. How do you do a password reset? Well, you could go back to a proofing agency who may already know your identity, or they somehow verify who you are and then give you a credential which you can then come back in and do your password reset. If I'm an organization and you're joining me as a new employee, I somehow have to figure out who you are, i.e. what your address is, what are your qualifications, are all these wonderful references genuine? So I could hand that whole lot off to another organization, and then they could produce a verifiable credential, which basically proves all these points, and they sign it. Of course, it involves, if I'm onboarding you, it involves me trusting that agency that has just done the identity proofing.
Yeah.
So,
and do you expect those agencies to be commercial parties or also government-related?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question actually, because the problem is with governments, a lot of them have got their own systems already.
Yeah.
So adopting this is, whether it's the verifiable credentials format, which is a standard, or whether it's Microsoft's implementation, to actually move away from what they've got, it's probably quite difficult.
Yeah.
And it will have to gain enough momentum for them to say, yeah, it's worth us issuing, these cards. As,
Indeed, because in some sort of way they are already doing that, but not for the digital identities in that case.
And if you think of the sort of big providers, like Visa and things, they have a verifiable credential. It's your credit card. Yeah. So it's what I think would be very interesting is if when you're setting up a B2B relationship with an organization, is the other organization can actually produce a absolute verified credential for a user that you want to onboard as a guest. Yeah. I mean, I can see that working very, very well. There is it's actually, well, the product group allowed me to include a slide on it. So in my in the presentation, there is if you're familiar with entitlement management, so the idea, if you're not familiar with entitlement management, the idea of entitlement management is I can create a set of resources that a user is allowed to use, right, in the organization, and then I can assign that user to them. right? And that they are then entitled to use all those resources. And it's actually a very good implementation because there's actually superb delegation on it. But one of the things you might want is to use that particular, package, access package, as it's called. You need to prove that you've done some training. Well, maybe you come along with a VC that proves you've done some training. And as you're going through My Access, where you request access to it, a little QR pops up and you scan it with your phone, and you get a thing. So I don't know whether can you see something on the thing or not?
No, it's a podcast recording. That's audio. So
it's only audio. Oh, I thought there's camera.
Yeah, it's both, but both will be published.
Okay, because I've got a authenticator app crammed with credentials. I could have flashed it.
Yeah, but probably we can share it on another way.
Yeah.
Let's see what we can do there. When we look at Verifiable ID and probably Azure AD, it's related. Is there also a relation between conditional access, where you have talked about, and Verifiable ID?
Well, I would just say to that, watch this space. I'm not going to say any more than that.
So we have to look into the near future and see what's coming on Verifiable ID and all the stuff that's coming there. So finally, we are in person. We talked about it yesterday. What does that mean for you to be here in person, Kenneth?
It's such another experience than just doing virtual events, only sending out. So what we see here, especially at this event, there's a lot of interaction going on, a lot of questions being asked. Meeting in person again has my higher preference when it comes to speaking in front of large audiences. Yeah.
And there is some background noise because we are in an open area and people are walking through to joining sessions. How is that for you, John, to be here?
Oh, it's absolutely great. I mean, there's so many benefits of doing an event in person. As Kenneth was saying, is when you're doing a webinar or some event, and you can. I tend to use large meeting software, so I can have a sea of faces in front of me, and I have this very large monitor. So I always get people to keep the cameras on. That's the deal. You come on one of my webinars, you keep your camera on, and I love it. And there is a bit of interaction, but it's not the same as here. Bumping into people in the corridor and there's just saying, "Oh, can I just ask a question?" or and I love that. I missed the events tremendously during lockdown. And this year it's actually been quite a number of events. And of course you get amazing things like being in amazing locations like Lucerne and going on boat trips and probably having too much to drink and all those sorts of exciting things.
Yeah, absolutely. Finally we can do these things again.
Indeed.
So thank you for joining me on this table this time, and maybe we will talk again on this conference, but maybe online in another recording. So thanks for now.
Okay, well, thanks.
Yeah. Thanks.